Hello again, this is Preheat. Welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So today we're going to be talking about Devastation Evoker in the War Within. In this video, we'll cover the hero talents, which one you should pick, what sort of talents you're going to run with that, what sort of stats you're going to look for, gearing, trinkets, augmentation versus devastation, the rotation, and really anything else that you need to know as a Devastation Evoker in the War Within. This information is based on sims and how the game is currently, so as always, things could change, and tuning is fickle. So if you're watching this video in the future, there's a good chance that something has changed. To start things off, we're going to be playing Scale Commander currently because Flame Shaper is very behind. Whenever you're leveling up, make sure to choose Scale Commander and then run it down mid here, pick all of these talents up immediately, going for maneuverability. Once you have that talent, you're going to want to go down the left side and pick up Melt Armor. Then you're going to want to switch over to the right side. You can either choose Unrelenting Siege here or Hardened Scales if you need more survivability. That choice is up to you. But once you've picked those, just go ahead and fill out the rest of the tree. So Scale Commander is interesting because it gives us two main things. One of those is Mass Disintegrate, which you've already seen me use in the intro to the video. That's where our Disintegrate is going to hit multiple targets whenever we use an empowered spell and also deal more damage in single target. That will also cause these dragons to fly by and do bombardments. They have a neat sound effect, although it is a little bit annoying to hear all the time. And then the other part of this is maneuverability, which basically makes our Deep Breath an ability that we do not have to put a reticle down for. We can just press the ability, it goes off, and it does a ton of extra damage with this talent. We also have Melt Armor. This is another bonus of Deep Breath. It basically causes our enemies to take 20% increased damage from our Disintegrate and our bombardments. And since we'll be casting a lot more Disintegrates in the War Within, this is just a really fantastic talent and is enough to push Deep Breath to the point where we actually want to pick up Lay Waste and Onyx Legacy in single target. When it comes to a single target build, this is what we would be looking at here. Obviously, you would want to pick up Eternity Span if there's more than one target. Also, we want Eye of Infinity for single target currently, but we do pick up Lay Waste and Onyx Legacy for single target. When it comes to more of a cleave build, we definitely want to pick up Eternity Span, and the value of Event Horizon definitely increases once we get our tier bonus, especially if we're hitting more than one target. This is actually quite nice. If we're looking for even more damage, maybe in a raid setting where there might be additional targets to cleave, we also want to pick up Charge Blast. Charge Blast is going to be really, really high value for us as Scale Commanders because whenever we use our Mass Disintegrate, those additional targets that are getting cleaved are all going to be contributing towards the Charge Blast, basically making our next Pyre or Dragon Rage, if we have stacks for that, hit for up to 100% increased damage. Now, this does not work with the bounce for volatility, and since this is a 2-talent point, it ends up being kind of hard to fit into the build since we also need to always have Lay Waste and Onyx Legacy. It just doesn't really fit well. But this is going to do really good damage in 3-target cleave. And honestly, this is what I plan to play in most of the raid encounters since most of them do not have just single target in them. The other big change for Evoker, and this is actually true in the pre-patch currently, so Spatial Paradox is now available to us as Devastation. Obviously, we get to choose this instead of Time Spiral, so make sure that you're making the correct choice here, but Spatial is actually really nice because it also increases our range if the healers aren't reserving it for a specific part of the fight. So this can allow us to basically hit from up to 50 yards away. It feels really great to use, but it also feels bad because it kind of gives it away that Blizzard could have given us increased range and they just chose not to. When it comes to talent variety, the main thing is if you're doing Mythic Plus, you could, instead of going into Iridescence, you could pick up over here Scorching Embers. This will give you more damage with all of your red abilities, but I will say that generally speaking, because we Mass Disintegrate so much in AoE, I prefer to just play Iridescence pretty much all the time. When it comes to our best stats as Devastation Evoker, it's kind of the same story as it has been on live for a while. We're going to want crit above everything else. But obviously, make sure to sim your own character since you may have a different situation than I do. It's always best to look at whatever your sim says. But beyond crit, I'm noticing that haste seems pretty good. So I'm actually going crit haste for the most part. Although I do have a nice mix of mastery and versatility as well. If you want the latest information, make sure to open up the Wowhead page. That is going to give you the most up-to-date info because I can't really update the video in real time. When it comes to our trinkets, we're going to want the Spy Master's Web above everything else. This is basically best in slot for every caster. It's very, very good. A lot of casters save this for execute, but we are going to just press it with every Dragon Rage. And then for our second trinket, we just want something that's like a stat stick. So the Mercurial Egg is pretty good. We can also go with any of these other options like the Gale of Shadows, Empowering Crystal, Aberrant Spellforge, the Sack Brood, Unbound Changeling, any of these are good. When it comes to our tier bonus, we are getting a 10% increase on our Disintegrate and our Pyre damage, so we just get more damage with our Spenders, which is nice. We also get cooldown reduction on Eternity Surge and also Essence Burst with it, which is really, really great because it means that every single time we press Eternity Surge, we can immediately follow it up with a Iridescence buffed Mass Disintegrate, since we will have the Essence for that with the Essence Burst, and will also benefit from Titanic Wrath as well. When it comes to the consumables, this stuff is not set in stone. Blizzard hasn't really decided what they're doing with this, but we basically just want crit if we can get it. So Cursed Critical Strike looks really good. And then make sure you also have the Flask of Alchemical Chaos. The reason why we're using this over the Tempered Aggression Flask is because if it's the random one, whenever we use our Tempered Potion, it's going to give us the bonus of all 4 effects as opposed to excluding the crit bonus. And it's also just fine since we get the other stats. Like, it doesn't really make too big of a difference. When it comes to the rotation, it is actually the same as you're used to, except for with a couple caveats. So number one, we're going to be using Deep Breath before we use our Dragon Rage. That is the biggest change, and you're actually going to use Deep Breath on cooldown after that, including in Dragon Rage. Just use it on cooldown as soon as it's up. Make sure that you're close to the target so you can get it out and you can eject from it without having to travel too far. The other big change is whenever you use an empowered spell, you're going to be fully channeling that Disintegrate unless you're chaining into another Mass Disintegrate. Because if you take a Mass Disintegrate and then you chain it into a normal Disintegrate, what's going to end up happening is you're basically going to lose out on the damage from Mass Disintegrate. So you need to make sure you let that thing fully channel out. For the uninitiated, the Devastation Evoker opener looks like this. You're going to press your Living Flame and then you're going to use Deep Breath. And as soon as you reach the target and it hits, you're going to want to cancel that Deep Breath and immediately go into your next spell. So right here, my Deep Breath has hit. So I'm going to go ahead and press the Deep Breath button again. That's going to cancel it. I'm going to use my Dragon Rage. And then here we're going to cast Fire Breath, Shattering Star, Eternity Surge. And with that Shattering Star, that's where we'd use our potions or trinkets if we have them. So here it goes. Fire Breath into Shattering Star, trinkets, potions, Eternity Surge. And then right here, you're going to have Shattering Star up and 2 charges of Mass Disintegrate. So here you can actually chain the Disintegrate, which means you can use another Disintegrate before it finishes. That's fine to do here, but make sure you don't do that on the second one, because if you chain a Mass Disintegrate into a non-Mass Disintegrate, you lose damage. So right here, I chain it, which means pressing the spell again. After that penultimate tick here, I'm going to let this one fully finish out though, as you can see. And then now we're just going to go back to normal disintegrating. And here I'm capped on essence, so I'm going to use this next disintegrate a little sooner, but this is just a super min-maxy thing. You don't really have to do this. Just know that this is something that you can do, pressing another spell to interrupt your disintegrate, or pressing another disintegrate to interrupt the one you're on. Early is totally fine if you're capped on essence, but don't do it with mass disintegrate. Again, just don't do that. And then right here, our Eternity Surge is coming up, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel my disintegrate with it, and then I'm going to tip the scales on my second Fire Breath here. And then, again, we want to let these things fully channel out. So, yeah, we can chain this one because it's a Mass Disintegrate into another Mass Disintegrate. But right here, we do not want to press Shattering Star, okay? So we're going to let this thing fully finish out first. Okay, and then right here, we'll Shattering Star. And then we just go back to Disintegrating. We can actually early chain during these if we want. We can actually do it right here on the third tick if we want to. But I honestly am trying to break this habit because of the Mass Disintegrate thing. Until they fix this, I feel like it's better to just maybe err on the side of caution. But here, yeah, I use my last Eternity Surge, let this thing fully chill out. And then I have my Fire Breath here, and then Deep Breath is going to be up, so we're going to go and Deep Breath after this. Cancel it out instantly. You notice how I'm actually playing kind of in melee? That's because I want to be able to use my Deep Breath and immediately break it and then go back to the rest of my rotation. You will feel like you are very immobile playing this build, unless you play the talent that gives you your hover back every time you use Deep Breath. That is honestly the only way to save it, because otherwise you're just kind of playing in melee and you're just stuck channeling Disintegrate the entire time. So yeah, that talent, it feels bad to pick because then you miss out on the avoidance on it, right? The 10% area reduction for the other talent, but I think it's pretty important to have the hover one for most situations if you can afford it, if you can survive, because it is just so much better to actually be able to hover around as you're fighting. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it in single target. Okay, so AoE is going to be pretty much the same as live, except for we're playing with Charge Blast, so there are some things that we'll do differently, and obviously we're using Deep Breath, and we're wanting to use Mass Disintegrate too. Basically, Mass Disintegrate into a Pyre each time. if possible. But what we can do is before the tank has everything kind of situated, like as everything's getting grouped up, if we're constantly looking for the target that's like closest to the tank and has probably the best threat, we can just build some charge blast stacks just with some Azure Strikes. And hopefully we don't pull aggro with that. That's nice because it gives us some essence bursts and it also builds up those charge blast stacks. So you see here, you know, I have 20 stacks here. So if I have 20 stacks on my charge blast and I use Dragon Rage, then I'm going to be getting this damage bonus that's going to give me 100% increased damage on my pyres. That's going to work on all 3 of the pyres from Dragon Rage. So because of that, I can also stack it with Red Iridescence, which is going to make it do more damage as well if I use my Fire Breath first. Now, obviously, this is something that you're going to have to play by ear, right? Like, there's going to be situations where you want to use Fire Breath inside Dragon Rage because you want the extensions more. But like at the start of like a normal Mythic Plus key, you can go in with tip skills already ready. So yeah, you don't have to worry as much about this. But yeah, so let's say I want to go in and get it started. Like it's time for us to actually go. Then I can do a max rank Fire Breath here into a Deep Breath, cancel it, use Dragon Rage into my Eternity Surge, full channel and Mass Disintegrate. This would hit all the targets. Do a Pyre, and then do another Mass Disintegrate. I'm going to get Essence Burst here for the Pyre, and then just fill the time with Pyres. Do the Tip the Skills on the Fire Breath here. Do a Mass Disintegrate. I'm going to use the Eternity Surge first, and then I'm going to throw out the Pyre, and then our Mass Disintegrate, and then just fill with Pyres. And use your Deep Breath as soon as it comes back up. You just want to use that on cooldown, right? And yeah, so right here, I'm going to get the Fire Breath back again. I'm just going to send that rank 1 for the extension. Send both of those back to back, and then Mass Disintegrate into a Pyre. And I'm just going to fill with the rest of the time since we're done with Dragon Rage. But yeah, that's the idea. Just like using the Mass Disintegrate is going to give you basically full charges of Charge Blast. So that's the big value there. But you can also use Fire Breath at first inside Dragon Rage too. The difference there is just going to depend on like how long the pull lasts. If you're going to pull aggro with it, because you may do too much burst. And, you know, basically you're looking at the value of the extensions versus the increased value of having more upfront damage. So definitely in like Mythic 0 week, or like if you're doing lower keys, it's probably going to be better to do the Fire Breath first, but results may vary. I would say just like try them both out, see what you like better. But in general, I kind of prefer the Fire Breath before the Dragon Rage. All right, so yeah, as you can see, Devastation is very simple and straightforward, and it's actually very similar to what it was like before. You know, just make sure that you use your Deep Breaths, make sure that you fully channel those Disintegrates. Let's talk about Augmentation versus Devastation. So right now, Augmentation Evoker looks like it probably does about the same damage as Devastation under most circumstances, under normal circumstances, but Augmentation, because it gains value whenever you have classes that are like really overpowered, if there's like a complete outlier in terms of the overall damage, Augmentation will gain value. So the worse the tuning is, the better Augmentation will be. Right now, it's looking like Augmentation does have targets that are maybe way better than the rest of the targets, like some Fury Arcane. So if that remains the same, then Augmentation will probably just do more damage than Devastation. But Devastation is actually not too far off when it comes to its damage. It's actually quite close. The biggest thing, though, is Augmentation has a lot of value in just like the group dynamic in Mythic Plus. It just gives a lot more to the group. So even if it wasn't really a damage thing where Augmentation is just better, like it would still probably be preferred. As a Devastation Evoker, you kind of just have to accept the fact that your spec just isn't really seen as being as valuable as Augmentation, even if you maybe play it better and you do more damage. None of that's really going to matter because it's all about the perception of what the meta is. So unfortunately, you know, the meta is going to dictate that Augmentation is going to be the way to go for Mythic Plus. But I think for Raid, Devastation actually has a pretty good place. And of course, if you're playing with friends or if you just really love Devastation, you know, I'm not telling you to play Aug. I'm just saying, just be aware that there is kind of a stigma against classes that aren't meta. This is just something that every class that isn't meta kind of experiences. But Devastation probably feels that a little bit more because we don't really bring anything to the table that Augmentation doesn't, right? Augmentation has everything we have. So since they're meta, since we're not, it's definitely going to be a bit of a harder sell for the Mythic Plus environment. Maybe even Raid 2, honestly, like it depends on who you're playing with. But again, Devastation is not bad. It's just that Augmentation is a support and there's no other support in the game. So it's just, you know, people are going to want the support. It makes them do more damage. It makes them feel better. It brings them utility. It gives them more healing. Gives them more tankiness. You know, there's just like, even if it's just a small amount, like it's enough where people will prefer you to play Aug in most situations. But ultimately, that's a decision that's up to you, right? So anyways, I hope this video prepares you for the War Within if you're looking to play Devastation. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.